What is good, everybody? Nathan Lombardo here with Lambo Media, and across the screen from me is my co-host here on the Walk It Off podcast, brought to you guys by Lambo Media, Christian Bergman, former Seattle Mariner, as well as Colorado Rocky. We have a lot of Colorado Rockies stuff to talk about with opening day just tomorrow, April 1st, Thursday, against the Los Angeles Dodgers. German Marquez with the ball. Let's just start off that, Christian. I've talked to some Rockies pitchers who are teammates of German, and they have a lot of high things to talk about him. I'm not sure if you guys crossed paths in the past, but I talked to Yency Almonte. He's a middle relief guy for the Colorado Rockies, and he had a lot of good things to say about German. He just said he needed to have a lot more trust in himself, a lot more, and that's a big thing in the game of baseball, is just believing in yourself, clearing your mind mentally, and just on that aspect of things, just believing in yourself in general. It sounds very vague, but it's so important in the game of baseball, especially when you're on the bump in such a big game. Christian, what are your thoughts on German and what you've seen from him?
Yeah, we played together, I believe. Oh man, it's been a while now, but I know we crossed paths in AAA a little bit, but I'm pretty sure in the big leagues as well. But ever since the first day I saw him, I think he was 21 at the time, maybe. I mean, you just knew the guy had,
Right.
the stuff to be a legit
Yeah.
big league pitcher. I mean, you could just tell from, just seeing the way the ball explodes out of his hands and just making guys look pretty foolish. And he's always kind of been that way. So awesome that he gets to take the ball on opening day. And yeah, like you said, it's just relaxing. And yeah, it's a big day, but we say it all the time that depending on how you look at it, it's just another game in the end.
Yeah.
A little more excitement, a little more stuff going on, but you have to treat it like another game. And as long as he does that, I think he'll do just fine.
Absolutely. And we're on the topic of pitchers. The Rockies have been facing some devastating injuries. One in Brendan Rodgers up the middle, a lot of flow, very smooth up the middle. But we're on the topic of pitchers. I want to talk a little bit about that. Scott Oberg possibly, facing an end to his career with blood clots in his elbow, requiring immediate surgery. Obviously, that's nothing to joke about, and it's a very serious injury. That's not even, that's very severe compared to even Tommy John. And Tommy John is, as severe of a surgery enough as it gets for a pitcher. And Kyle Freeland as well. That's a gut punch to the Rockies already, and especially for the pitching staff as a whole. We didn't see the Rockies' pitching staff perform as greatly as we would have liked last year. And then, we faced two injuries right before the season starts in Scott Oberg and Kyle Freeland. What does this mean to the starting rotation for the Rockies? We could see German Marquez being our one guy coming off of a, not great season from Kyle Freeland, but Kyle Freeland was still a very dominant guy who's, shown that he can put up Cy Young numbers, being a top 3 candidate in 2017 or 2018 for the Cy Young award, one of those seasons. We've seen what he can do in the past. What does this mean for the starting rotation?
Yeah, at least initially, the other guys are just going to have to kind of pick up the slack and hope that he comes back strong and it doesn't linger later into the season. So the important thing is now to make sure he's healthy, and because the last thing you want is to turn maybe a 1 month injury into a 4 month injury.
So serious
because you re-aggravate it. So
yeah,
it was shoulder, correct?
Yeah, shoulder. I think something in the shoulder. Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes shoulders and pretty much any part of your arm can be a little finicky, and just depending on where it is, like it can take longer to heal. So we just want to make sure that these first few weeks, you don't want to rush someone back just to try and get them ready for early in the season. There's no point. So
it's not a
like I said,
season.
Right, exactly. So, other guys will have to step up and perform until he gets back. And then, the news about Oberg is just, man, it just kills me. He's such a great guy, great clubhouse guy, great pitcher. It's sad. I think this is the third time he's had to deal with this throughout his career. And man, hopefully it's, there aren't any long-term health effects, but man, it sucks. It really sucks. So, thinking about him and and hoping everything's all right with him. So, and hoping he recovers as well. So, just from a not even a baseball perspective,
Right.
just a just a human perspective.
And you mentioned it. You hit the nail right on the head. I was talking about this yesterday on the Mile High Sports podcast, The Fan Cave. You know, it sucks obviously because he had a lot of potential on the mound. He still had it. He was still what was it, mid 90s? He might have even been touching upper 90s. But it sucks even more because he was such a great teammate, such a great guy in the locker room. I never had the capability of meeting him yet, but just speaking from experience, you've talked about it. I'm sure you've spoken to him before. Yency Almonte's talked about it. I've talked to Kyle Freeland here and there about it. Scott Oberg was always an upbringing guy. No matter what was going on the field, he was always there for you as a person. And I think that's what is hurting the most for the Rockies teammates, former teammates of Scott Oberg, and the Rockies organization as a whole. So that's an unfortunate thing, but for the listeners that don't know, you obviously pitched for the Seattle Mariners and the Colorado Rockies, so you can speak from firsthand experience. Did you ever face any arm injuries that were, possibly threatening your career or, serious time in the major leagues?
I always tell people I didn't throw hard enough to do that much, which is kind of true, I think. No, I was lucky. I had, I strained an oblique actually on my non-throwing side, but no surgeries. Somehow I stayed out from under the knife, which was good. But just inflammation, stuff like that. Nothing really major. So, but I really think there is something to the fact that I didn't throw really hard. So, there's those extra. Probably about 10 miles an hour nowadays, sometimes more.
It's crazy.
From 88 to 98 or 90 to 100.
It's crazy.
Puts a lot of strain on the body. So I never had to deal with anything major like that.
And speaking of velo, I want to talk a little bit about Daniel Bard. We weren't even planning about talking about him, but let's just talk about him and his story. Former Red Sox guy, arguably the best top 3 reliever, during that time frame. Obviously, I wasn't, as into it as much as I am now, but, coming off, he retired completely, faced quite a few injuries, had the yips, I believe, and then came back, fought through all of that mentally, came back, and now is touching 98, 99 in spring training. So what an amazing story, from Daniel Bard, and, what he's been able to do this past season. What was NL Comeback Player of the Year? We've talked about that a few episodes back. So just a quick shout out to him. But I want to talk to you a little bit about, your experience. Opening day is tomorrow for the Colorado Rockies. What's kind of going through a player's perspective and a player's mind? What's their mindset when opening day is a day away and, they're heading into a brand new season? They're clearing their mind from, maybe a rough last season, maybe a great last season. You can't, keep your head too high. You can't keep your head too low. You got to stay, level headed. What's kind of going through a player's mind?
Yeah, I was there for 2 opening days, and it was always, both times was awesome. There's just something about like being there on opening day that's just kind of special. But as a player, like you're going into it as it really doesn't matter whether you had a good spring training or a bad spring training.
Absolutely.
Because it's like, okay, spring training's over.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to compete now. And everybody, I would say just about everybody is itching by the end of spring training to get on the field and start playing real games, because spring training is always long and boring.
Yeah.
So you're always ready to get out there and get going. So I would imagine everybody from the top of the the top teams all the way down to the bottom teams, they're all ready to go and start playing. So always an exciting time as a player.
Those backfield games over at spring training are definitely great. I saw Harrison Bader post something like that on Instagram where, he was like, that's where you get the real work in. But, I saw something the other day. It was the fact that, AAA for the Colorado Rockies down in Albuquerque doesn't start until May. So they're actually holding their alternate site. All 30 teams have an alternate site, and majority of them are obviously holding them at spring training facilities. facilities not too far away from the ballpark. Last year for the Colorado Rockies, it was over at Metro State. Speaking of Metro State, uh, perfect game thrown Sunday, I believe, by Cade Crater. Yeah, Cade Crater. Alex Gonzalez, Coach Gonzo's son, was catching that game. Marcos Gonzalez's brother. So I had the capability of talking to him a little bit about that yesterday. But back to what I was saying, the Colorado Rockies last year were, training at Metro State, but this year they're actually training over at Double Angel Ballpark in Parker, the facility of the Game Day Baseball Youth Training Facility. So that's an interesting concept. Those are, I think that's going to benefit them a little bit because it's an all-turf field. It's a spring in Colorado. You never know what's going to hit as far as snow, rain. So I think, the turf is definitely going to be a beneficial part of that. They couldn't hold it at Metro State because they're still in the middle of the season. I think they're 18th in the nation for college baseball at the D2 level. So congrats to Metro State. But speaking of injuries, we talked about Kyle Freeland, Scott Ober, but those aren't the only two. Brennan Rodgers, a guy we've been patiently waiting on. He's probably in the minor leagues even when you were with the Colorado Rockies. He faced a hamstring strain, out for a month, was having an absolute breakout spring training, had a lot of potential to, show what he has in this first month. But, it's just tough. It'll be interesting to see what Buddy Black does with that infield because, you got Chris Owings, you got CJ Crone, you got Josh Fuentes, Ryan McMahon, Garrett Hampson, who's projected to come off the bench in the outfield, but he still has the capability to play second base. He could probably play third base. He's, quick. He has a quick twitch. So I think it'll be interesting to see what he does. But I want to wrap up this podcast episode, this Walk It Off Wednesday episode, Christian, with our predictions for the Colorado Rockies record this season. Do you want to start off or do you want me to?
You go ahead. I got to do math real quick.
All right. I got them just below 500 at 80 and 82. I see them having a rough start. 7 of their first 13 games. 7 of their first 13 games are stacked or are faced against the Dodgers. So I think they're going to have a little rough start. They're going to have to get their feet wet with no Freeland, no Brendan Rodgers, Scott Oberg out for the season. It'll be interesting to see what they do with their rotation as a whole, not just their starting rotation, not just their middle relief, not just their closers, but their pitching staff as a whole. It'll be interesting to see what they do just because of the injuries they faced so late on in spring training. It's Buddy Black having to make moves like that. So that's my prediction. A little rough start, but I say, maybe they have a stint like they did early on in 2020 where they just pop off and they can, ride that out, ride it into maybe a wild card game if, we're lucky. But we'll see where it takes them.
Man, you took some good numbers there. Let's see. I'm gonna go.
It's tough. It's tough.
I'm going to go with this. I think they're going to surprise a little bit. It's not going to be good enough to get into the playoffs because of LA and San Diego.
Right, yeah. Insane.
84 and 78.
I like it. Giving them a little potential to be
I think they'll kind of outperform a little bit.
Have a little chip on their shoulders.
Yeah. Obviously it obviously depends on, how these injuries play out over the course of the season. Who knows what it'll look like towards the end, but that's what I'm going to go with right now.
I like it. That's not a bad prediction. We're right around the same numbers, but you got them plus 500. Maybe a little. My Rockies fans and if any Rockies organizational guys are seeing this, they're a little upset with me. But I'm just trying to stay as realistic as possible, not as biased as
It's opening day. You got to be optimistic.
Yeah, exactly. But, speaking of having a chip on their shoulder, before we wrap this up, the Rockies, I think the Rockies as a whole will obviously have a chip on their shoulder, but it'll be interesting to see how Kyle Freeland bounces back from this injury. We saw him have a rough first season, and then his second and third season, he put up Cy Young numbers. So it'll be interesting to see what numbers he puts up down the stretch of the season. I think the biggest thing for the Rockies is to stay healthy and as consistent as possible. I think that's a big thing they've faced in the past is just not being consistent, not just their pitching, but last season, believe it or not, it was their hitting. Although they had Trevor Story and Charlie Blackmon and, Nolan Arenado. Nolan Arenado finished off the season with a .250 batting average. Charlie Blackmon, sure, he started off the first 20 games with a 550 batting average, but finished the season with like a 303 career season batting average. And then, Trevor Story finishing off with a sub 300 batting average as well, right along with Nolan. So I think that'll be the biggest thing for them. A lot of talent on the team, a lot of utility guys who can, move around the infield, even the outfield with Garrett Hampson. It'll be interesting to see what they do with Raimel Tapia and Sam Hilliard up, the middle, and then with Charlie Blackmon and right. So that wraps up everything for this Walk It Off episode, brought to you guys by Lambo Media. I'm Nathan Lombardo, and across the screen from me is Christian Bergman. Stay tuned next Wednesday for a special episode.